All right, so we're going to record this so that we can put it up on our website for people that weren't able to join us today. My name's Jessica Handy. I'll be your MC for the next hour. And if you have not yet added your information to the chat, go ahead and do that now. Share your name, the city where you live, your role, for example, like if you're a parent or a student or a teacher. And if you want, you can share a little bit about why you're here today. So I'm with the Illinois Early Literacy Coalition, which is a group of Illinois residents who believe that every child deserves equitable access to evidence-based literacy instruction. So we push for state policies to make the right to read a reality, and there is a whole lot of work left to do to reach that goal. Our game plan tonight is we want everyone to leave here with a basic understanding of how students learn to read and how we can support the kids in our lives to become stronger readers. And we'll accomplish that by introducing our speaker, Kim Tate, who is going to share some slides and share a couple of video clips. Then we're going to hear from two parents who have stories about how they personally intervened to support their children's journey to learn to read. And then finally, we'll share some tips that you can take with you to help shape your summer of reading. So without further ado, here's our speaker for tonight, Kim Tate. Kim is a dual language teacher in Champaign, a Teach Plus Senior Policy Fellow, and the 2023 recipient of the Golden Apple Foundation's highest honor, the Award for Excellence in Teaching. Kim has served in numerous policy capacities related to improving equitable education outcomes, including being a member of the Illinois Comprehensive Literacy Plan writing team with the State Board of Education. And we are really honored to have her with us tonight. So I'm going to turn it over to Kim.
Thank you, Jessica, and it's so wonderful to be here with all of you, supporters of literacy. Good evening, everyone. Speaking is natural. When we surround our children with language, they learn to speak. But reading is different. Our brains aren't naturally wired to read. We build new pathways in our brains when we learn to read. And with the right instruction, almost all of us can successfully do this amazing neurological feat. So this is the simple view of reading. And I remember as a teacher, when I first saw this, it blew my mind, but it immediately clicked and made so much sense to me. So simple view of reading says that reading comprehension is the product of words you can decode times the language you understand. It is important to think of this as an equation. When we think of the word recognition bucket, we consider decoding or breaking the code, cracking the code of our alphabet. Word recognition includes components such as phonological awareness, that's basically speech sounds, as well as phonics, or the relationship between written letters and spoken sounds. And then when we put that together, and students are able to do this well, we get fluent readers, and we're hoping that with that equation, that word recognition times the language comprehension or the language they understand, we get readers who can comprehend the text. Again, it's important to think of this as an equation. If we have students who are really good at decoding or recognizing words, and let's say that's a 1, let's give it a value, a 1. For example, they see the word team, and they know that EA, that vowel team makes the long E sound, and so they've got team. They can recognize that word, they know what it is, but they don't know that it's a group of people that work together for a shared goal. So language comprehension is 0, and we know that 1 times 0 is going to be 0. So it's important that they have both of those components in order to comprehend really well. And as caregivers, as parents, as educational professionals, we want to make sure that they have both of those to lead to comprehension. And so sometimes the strategies that are taught to students early on are actually more like compensation skills for weak readers than strategies for strong readers. So we see here some examples of common reading strategies. I've been guilty of this. A student can't decode a word, doesn't know what a word is, and we say, oh, skip the word, keep reading. Maybe you can come back. That's the Skippy Frog, right? Or the eagle-eyed look at the pictures. No, please don't do that. Don't do that. There is a mountain of evidence that tells us there is no substitute for decoding words. Not looking at pictures, not memorizing a text pattern, not guessing what word could fit. Okay, so here is a video of a lesson of a teacher telling students to look at the picture to fill in an unknown word. Let's watch what happens.
Hi, first graders. Today we're going to start learning about reading strategies. A strategy is a tool or something that you can use to help you work through a problem. A reading strategy helps us work through a tricky word that we come to in a book that we're reading. Now, we all come to words that we don't know in a book, and it's important to have a toolbox of strategies and some special friends to help us. The first strategy and special friend that we're going to learn about today is our friend Eagle Eye. Eagle Eye helps us with the strategy of using the picture to help us when we come to a tricky word. You can look at the picture for clues to help you when you come to a word that you don't know. I'm going to use my eagle eye to help me when I read this book, Leah is Hungry. When I come to a word I don't know, I'm going to look around the picture and see if there's any clues in the picture that can help me read that tricky word. Okay, I'm going to start with this page here. I am hungry, Leah said. I'm hungry too, said Dad. Here is okay, now this word that's circled in yellow is the word that I don't know. I'm not quite sure what that word is, so I'm going to look at the picture and see if there's anything in the picture that helps me read this tricky word. I see Leah sitting down in her chair. I'm not sure that word matches that word in yellow. That word starts with an S, so I should probably look for a part of the picture that starts with an S. I see Leah sitting in her chair, there's the table, and I see her dad, and Dad is holding a plate with a sandwich on it. Oh, wait a minute, sandwich. I wonder if that is a word that I'm trying to figure out. Let's see, here is a sandwich. Sandwich. Here is a sandwich, said Dad. Oh, so that word must be sandwich. I see Dad is holding that sandwich on a plate in the picture. Now I'll read the whole page again just to make sure. Here is a sandwich, said Dad. No, said Leah, the sandwich looks too big. That picture clue really helped me figure out that tricky word. Thanks, Eagle Eye.
Now I'm going to take a deep breath. Why? Because I did this. Full confession, I did this and it was wrong. This is not good literacy instruction at all. Okay. And I want you to think about what happens when we've taught children to rely on looking at pictures in a couple of years when, guess what? They're in fifth grade, they're in sixth grade, and there are no pictures in their chapter book. In this case, that word, that tricky word, sandwich, is decodable. There aren't any letters in this word that make unexpected sounds. What's tricky is that it's a long word. So, a better strategy to help a child read the word sandwich, which will serve them for years, is to help them divide the word into syllables. Okay, so we see this first part here, and she started off with the sound. So she started off, we have stand, right? That's the first syllable. And now if we look at the next syllable, which, we put them together, sandwich, sandwich, okay? Later in life, our kids will encounter all sorts of multisyllabic words. They'll have words with prefixes and words with suffixes. Learning how to attack that word by dividing it into digestible syllables is a strategy strong readers will use. But telling them to look at the pictures will hold them back. Thinking back to that comprehension bucket, that picture can be helpful if they can decode the word, but they don't understand what the word means. Or it can help them double check that they decoded correctly. But the trick here, what we really want to impart to you, is that when your child is reading to you, don't tell them to look at the pictures. Focus on the letters. In the classroom, I would tell my students, eyes, if I see them moving to the picture, I would say, eyes on the text. Here's another video of a mom reading with her daughter. Let's take a look.
Here's how I did my experiment. First, I had my daughter read a book on Raz Kids. Then I had her read the same story, but this time with the pictures covered. Then I had her read the harder words from the story with no pictures and no context. And finally, I tested these words again the next day to see how much my daughter had learned. So what do you think? Will she learn these new words even though she doesn't have the phonics skills to sound these words out? Let's see what happened.
I ate paint my swing purple. I paint the fence purple.
Yeah, it's amazing how you're reading without even looking at the words.
I paint the door purple.
Great.
Look at all that purple. I paint my mom purple. Mom doesn't ought not like purple. It paint.
Overall, not too bad, and she's nailing the word purple. Let's see what happens when we take away the pictures.
I put my swig up.
Okay, great.
Up.
Okay.
Paint.
Okay.
That's not what I was expecting.
Go ahead. Okay, go ahead.
I
It doesn't work that way.
You can tell she's really thrown off by the lack of pictures. She even forgets momentarily how to sound out words
Do
at
your
all.
best. It's a little hard without the picture.
paint. I like paint the ink fence.
Good.
Can you put the old one back?
Purple.
Okay.
I paint the door purple.
Nice. She's starting to get the hang of it again. She doesn't have pictures to look at, but the sentences are pretty repetitive, so she can kind of figure it out from the context and the pattern.
Mom. Does not like purple paint.
Nice. That was a strong finish. Now let's see what happens when she doesn't have any pictures or context to help her.
Door.
Okay.
And swing.
All right.
And paint.
Okay. Let's see how she handles words that she doesn't really know how to sound out.
Stars.
Those words were a little tricky, but she'll definitely get this word. I mean, she saw this word, what, a million times?
How are you?
It's like she'd never seen the word before in her life. You can actually see the camera frame shaking because I'm so stunned. When we tried again the next day, it wasn't much better.
You
Oh, good try. I wasn't expecting this at all. How could she be exposed to a word so many times, have it appear on every single page,
Look at all that purple.
and then not even recognize it 5 minutes later? Now, she did get some words right without pictures or context, but check out how her accuracy changed over time. The green boxes represent correct responses. When the pictures went away, her accuracy suffered. When she tried the words without pictures or context, she did get some words right, but notice which words they were. They were the words she was able to sound out. The words she previously guessed from pictures or context, she could no longer read once those cues were taken away, nor could she read them the next day. Okay, but you might be wondering,
Right. So those pictures, really didn't help. That word purple was tricky for a whole different reason than sandwich. Purple has two tricky spelling patterns. The U in the R says and that word also ends with the consonant plus LE. So she could come up with the word purple when she saw the picture, but she couldn't read it. She wasn't even looking at the text when she said the word. So the mom taught her the spelling patterns, and we'll see that because purple is a decodable word once you know the patterns.
so the UR makes the sound Say
Sir.
Yeah, so let's practice some words. I'm so sorry we have to erase this.
But mommy, can I just have one more detail?
Okay. Oh my gosh, it's a baby. There's a baby. Okay, maybe we can't use the whiteboard. Got a piece of paper.
And we're just going to practice this sound. So how do we say that again?
Burn. Curl. Surf. Burn. Curl. Surf. There. Look. L-E.
So something about L-E is that when it sees a consonant, it just loves to hug that consonant. It goes, ooh, and it just hugs. It just hugs the consonant, ooh. And it smushes and hugs the consonant so much that it separates from the rest of the word. You can cover up the consonant L-E. So not just the L-E, but also the consonant in front of it, okay? So let's read this part.
App.
That's, yes.
App.
And then put it together.
App. Oh, apple.
That's right. Then you say dull, and then you put it together.
Apple. Nib.
Excellent.
Nibble.
Perfect. That's our friend again.
I miss you a lot.
Happens when you put it together with a consonant L-E.
Turtle. Apple.
Mm-hmm.
Paddle.
Mm-hmm.
Nibble.
Mm-hmm.
Turtle.
Excellent.
Let's
We
like
see
last time, green boxes.
what happened when the parents actually taught the spelling patterns. We allowed that child to generalize the knowledge that she acquired about those spelling patterns. You can generalize that knowledge across so many words. Once students learn that consonant plus LE pattern, there's so many words that have it. Cuddle, able. They begin to be able to decode so many words, and that's a skill that's going to serve this child and the children that we're teaching to read forever.
Correct responses. Before the lesson, she only knew 1 out of the 5 words. Right after the lesson, she gained 3 words, including turkey, which we had not practiced. That means she generalized the phonics skills we learned to a new word. After I coached her on the word purple, she got that one too. And she could read all of these words the next day. How does that compare to the purple story? In that case, she had 4 words she couldn't sound out. She did not learn any skills to sound them out, and once the pictures and context went away, she couldn't read any of the words. It seems pretty clear that when given the phonics lesson, my daughter's learning moved in the right direction.
So what's the one trick? Cue your kids to look at the text, not the pictures. Eyes on the text. 60% of Illinois students aren't proficient readers yet. Some of these students, up to 15 to 20% of them, have a reading disability like dyslexia. Many do not. But with the right instruction, nearly all kids can become proficient readers. And I'm just going to say that again. Nearly all kids can become proficient readers. I look at a lot of school improvement plans and I look at, we will increase our percentage of proficient readers by 10% or 5%. And it's still a number that's underneath 50%. We really need to internalize this idea that nearly all kids can become proficient readers. They can with the right instruction. So here are some other things that you can do. I saw in the chat, some folks are looking for some support and some strategies. Here are some other things you can do to support your child to grow their reading skills this summer. For younger kids, you can familiarize them with the concept that words carry meaning by running your finger along the words as you read to them, as you're reading those words. Even another trick you can do is you can put their fingers in the text and gently put your finger on top and guide their finger across underneath that text uh, so that they understand that words carry meaning. Surround the students, surround your children with books and opportunities to read things that actually interest them. As a fifth grade teacher, I had a lot of books on wrestling. I was not a big fan of wrestling, but I had a lot of boys who were. And so we read a lot of that. And they actually developed an interest and a love of reading, which then translated into other topics. So surround them with books and opportunities to read things that interest them. Let them see you read. Help them find that intrinsic motivation for reading. For kids under 5, sign up for the Dolly Parton Imagination Library. We'll share that link with you in the chat and at the end of this presentation. Build vocabulary and content knowledge for all ages by exploring your community where you're at. Go to parks, museums, libraries, the grocery store, the bank, and talk to your child about what you're doing. Now, we're going to play a little game together to model a great activity that you can do to build oracy, which is one of the components of great reading. It's a great road trip game. I'll say the first sentence, and then I want you to make up the next one. So here's the first sentence. Once upon a time, there was a puppy who loved to explore. So this is the first sentence, and this is something you can do. Come up with a great first sentence, or it doesn't even have to be a great first sentence. It can be just a first sentence about something that they're interested in. My son loves puppies. And then ask, what happens next? And listen. So I'm going to ask you, based on this first sentence, once upon a time, there was a puppy who loved to explore. What happens next? Can I have someone just type into the chat, if you would? What happens next? Once upon a time, there was a puppy who loved to explore. And even in the rain, the puppy would go out. And then what happened? He found a ball stuck in the bushes. You see where I'm going with this? And you can just add on and add on. Another great thing to do is to actually write down what your child tells you. Keep that and then use that to build fluency. So do some repeated readings of that story that you develop together. Maybe they want to add on to it. Maybe they want to elaborate and add more details later on. And in those bushes, he found a bone. So this is a really simple activity, but it's powerful. It helps to build oracy. You help to develop vocabulary and that language comprehension part of the simple view of reading. And then you can actually, once you start writing down the story, you can get into some decoding as well, or that word recognition portion. Oh, I just love this. This makes, I love all of these details that you're adding on to our story. We got to save this chat. I might actually use this.
All right. Thank you, Kim. This was really fun. I am going to introduce us now to our next two speakers for the day. And we'll start with Katie. And let's see, Katie and Yvette are both fierce advocates for their kids. And we wanted to have them come to actually share some practical experience of how they supported their kids to become readers. So Katie, why don't you go first for us?
Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming out on this beautiful night. I have three children, and my two oldest went to school, started learning to read, brought home like their easy books, started bringing home other books. We went to the library all the time, and it seemed like that's the way kids learn to read. And my third child did all the same things, but just wasn't growing in her reading. So in second grade, she was just still really kind of struggling, and not struggling big time. Like she could open the book and she could get through a page, but she kind of sounded like that the Purple Story child there that was so hard to listen to. And so she would get to the end of a page and she'd be pretty much exhausted, should be impatient, and should want to be done. Like there just wasn't a lot of enthusiasm. So I was like, gosh, I guess she's just learning a little more slowly. My mom happened to be, she lives out of state, and she was here, and she said, there's something wrong. By the way, my mom is a third grade teacher and started her career as a reading specialist. And I said, well, you're a reading specialist. Tell me. And she said, oh, well, I don't know what's wrong. And so this, by the way, taps into something we've learned that she said, I didn't get training in how like the brain learns to read. So you need to go find, and at that point she had told me, I've heard these Wilson trained teachers, but anyway, she said, you need a trained teacher, trained tutor, and this is going to cost you. I'll help you pay, And so we brought her outside the school system. Well, I did ask the teacher to take care, and he said, she's on track. She'll learn eventually, just like your other kids. But my mother said, you better do something. So I took her to a tutor. And for parents out there, you know what it's like to throw your 7-year-old in the back of the minivan after school and say, we're going to go see a reading tutor. She was ashamed. She was angry. She was kind of tired, and she was so mad she was missing playtime after she had been in school all day. We brought her, she got an assessment, and the assessment only took one session, like 40 minutes, and they brought me back the next week and they said, well, it appears that your daughter doesn't know her vowel sounds. She doesn't have good discrimination of the phonemic, like the sound, she can't discern different A, E, I, O, U, Y. And they said, give her to us twice a week for the next few weeks. Okay, it took 8 weeks. 8 weeks. And the kid suddenly, so that was in the spring of second grade. By the end of second grade, she was flying through the books. And I actually said, she's doing so well, let's keep her. And she's like, well, actually, we tested her phonics, on the consonants and the vowels, and she's doing pretty well. So bring us back if you encounter other trouble. But this, it's expensive to get your kid trained. But in short, I got involved because I realized it's pretty hard on us parents, and way, way harder on the kids when you think they're doing everything right. They're in school, they're doing everything, and it was the classroom instruction that was just a little limited, and it was doing the old way. It happened to be Lucy Calkins of doing that purple kind of lesson. She sounded just like that child. So that's my story, and that's why I've been involved in this ever since.
Thanks, Katie. Yvette?
Hello, my name is Yvette. I reside in Springfield. I have an 18-year-old son now. With him, I noticed things early on. I would say as early as kindergarten that there was issues with him being able to, be able to sound out letters. I'm sorry, I'm not good at public speaking at all. So it was like the simplest thing, like the for dog or cut. It just he just did not grasp at it at all. But kindergarten, they was like, give them time, give them time. It became even more apparent in the first grade once you start getting those sight words where you cannot sound them out. So as the years progressed, I just kept trying to like tutor him and try to figure out things on my own. Somewhere along the line, I did run across dyslexia, and unfortunately, the school districts do not recognize dyslexia. So I bring it to his pediatrician, and his pediatrician was like, "Hey, maybe you should get him tested for dyslexia." And we took him to a clinical licensed psychologist where they conducted like a series of tests, like attention and executive functioning, intellectual functioning, and academic functioning tests. And with that being said, he was also diagnosed with ADHD, and that also confirmed that. And also that's when it was confirmed that he was dyslexic. And by that time, he was like 11 years old in the 5th grade. Now, having the diagnosis didn't end anything because the school does not recognize dyslexia. So it was like, okay, you have this diagnosis, but they did not have the teachers to even train or help him in any type of way. So I kind of just had to venture off and, research on my own. And I stumbled across Springfield Children's Dyslexia Center, which specialize in helping children with dyslexia, and they use a method called Orton-Gilliam approach, where it's like a multi-sensory approach to reading. And he was in that program for like 2 years, and when I tell you, they accomplished more than what I have done in the last 5 to 6 years in 2 years. Trying to see what else.
It's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's it.
No, that's great. Thank you so much for sharing.
No problem.
I think one of the unfortunate things about both of these stories is that these were both kids who who had to go outside of their school setting to get the support they needed and the right tutoring that they needed, the right instruction to meet their needs. And I think more schools, it seems like, are well, I don't know if more are. We hope more are. We hope that more kids are finding ways to get the instruction they need in their public schools without having to go outside of that system. That would be the goal of the coalition, is that every kid gets the supports they need right there in their school without having to have parents go through this to get their kids the right instruction that they needed. So I think the last thing, I think we have a few minutes. We could do questions. If anybody has questions for Kim, Katie, or Yvette, anything that's on your mind, you are free to unmute and ask questions.
Jessica, will
Yeah.
you just mention how someone knows if their school is doing it right?
Yes. I think it's hard to know if your school is doing it right. I think that's one of the main things that's hard for us as parents who are, I mean, some people on this call are teachers and experts, but I think it's hard as parents to know, is my kid getting the right information at school, the right instruction at school. So the the cueing that we saw in the Eagle Eye video. That's a common curriculum that used to probably be in most of the schools in the state, but more and more are moving away from that. I know my kids' school was using that curriculum until a couple of years ago, and they've just changed. So so finding out what curriculum your school uses for literacy would be a good first start to, ask the teacher like what curriculum you're using. And also kind of finding out what screeners you're using. Right? Is your kid getting assessed to know what is the specific area they need to work on? I think this is a really big question, and I would let anyone else who wants to jump in and give any feedback on, how do you know if they're doing the right thing? Yvette.
Like my son, he was placed in a special ed room for his IEP, which is the individualized education plan. And what I noticed was I made sure he came home with every single workbook sheet that they did and that was graded. And I started noticing, like, I felt like they were just passing him along and just allowing him to write anything and everything. I'm like, I'm looking at his homework. I'm like, I know you can do a better job than this, and I know this is not acceptable. They should not allow you to get away with this sentence format or whatever the case was, whatever. I would just say, stay very involved in what your child is doing in the classroom and what's being graded, and ask a lot of questions.
I think if your child has an IEP, that's a really good opportunity to be able to, they have to do a certain amount of testing and come back and, share how your kid's doing in different areas. And I think that's probably one of the things that is really important, to make sure that the interventions that kids are getting through their IEP are actually tied to where, the specific area where the kid needs support. Like, you remember Kim showed the simple view of reading that shows a kid's reading comprehension is the product of the words they can decode times the language they can comprehend. So if your child has a strong vocabulary and they can understand when something's read to them, and if the interventions they're getting are not around decoding, then that's a mismatch. So making sure that the interventions are tied to really where the deficiency is. I think this is an area that we need to dig into at our next literacy lounge, actually, because I think it is really hard to know if kids are getting what they need in their school settings.
Yeah, I was going to say, because I don't think Malachi is getting their right needs in their school that they are, but school claimed that they are. But I don't think so, because a whole year went by and I haven't seen any much progress in the reading, and their reading level have not really changed much that I feel like it should. I have a fifth grade reading at a low level, and I have a third grade, a third going on fourth reading at a low level as well. So it's like, are you guys really doing what you need? And am I doing what I need to make sure they're reading in the right levels? How long they're going to be behind?
I think that is maybe one of the other things to really mention before we leave, is that, like, what we're talking about today is sort of like how to support your kid this summer so that you're helping build their literacy skills. And, we're trying to prevent the summer slide and them, forgetting a lot of what they've learned during the year. But really, it's not up to parents to teach their kids to read. I mean, parents need to support this, but we have people who are trained professionals in our schools teaching, teaching our kids to read. And so it really needs to be both. Like parents, it's good for parents to know these tricks. It's absolutely imperative for teachers to have the right professional development and training so that they're able to provide this instruction at schools. We rely on our public schools to do this. And there are so many great teachers that we've met along the way who have just invested so much of themselves and getting training and getting some who have been upset that they didn't have a full toolbox of tools when they came out of their ed prep program, and they've really had to work hard to get there. So we'll talk more about, what good literacy instruction looks like in the schools probably in our September meeting. We do these quarterly. But in the meantime, we are going to, let's see, we've got a couple of poll questions for you, that we're hoping.
Jessica, oh,
Yeah, please go.
sorry. I was gonna, well, first of all, thank you for saying that it's not our job to, teach our children to read. Um, because I've been trying to learn myself a little bit more about the reading and hearing about like the science of reading and like strategies and things just so I can support my daughter more. But I really liked what Yvette mentioned about like her child being in special ed with like IEP. And that's exactly like my daughter is in self-contained classroom IEP, sixth grade, reading at a first grade level. But one, I just felt like they didn't put enough effort. They feel like, they're special ed students, you know, maybe they downgrade what their capacities might be. But I just kind of went back to basics, how like Katie said, where like the vowel sounds, where I was like, after trying to study so much, I said, okay, I'm gonna bring it back to basics. Let's see where she's at with her vowels. And just how like Katie mentioned, it was the same thing for her where like um two out of the five she couldn't pronounce the correct sound, but then like she was hard for her to differentiate the short vowel versus the long vowels and how to point out a long vowel. So I've been trying to help her, but I had asked her classroom, I said, could the school district provide like a reading specialist that pulls her out to focus on reading? And they had said no, that because she's already in a self-contained classroom, they're already giving her support and what's it called, a modified curriculum, which they use the unique learning system. And my question was just, do you know if for fact, like, is that true? Because our kids are in special ed, they cannot have like extra services in reading?
Mhm. No,
I Go ahead, Yvette. You probably do know this more than I do.
I'm sorry. But personally, my son did have a reading interventionist while he was having an IEP. Actually, I did have to fight for that. Um, it didn't help him any because they didn't have the right tools to teach him correctly, unfortunately. So he didn't make much progress, but it was a fight to get that reading interventionist.
I am gonna set up a call for you and her name's Barb Cohen. She's the co-chair of the Literacy Committee's Policy Committee, and she's who I talk to anytime if I have a foster kid going into an IEP meeting. I have a 10-minute conversation with Barb ahead of time, and I am armed with all sorts of resources ahead of time. So let me connect with you offline and get you connected to her, and you guys can have a conversation, and she can give you it is not legal advice, I think she would have to say, but you know, she's just a good thought partner for this.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, Mia, do we have a couple of polls we can put up now? Or okay, so we've got a QR code at the end of this, and these are two documents that we're going to give you guys to, you know, as a takeaway for things. If you've got emerging readers who haven't learned those decoding skills yet, some activities that you can do with them. And then if you have older children who have generally like mastered how to decode most words, some other activities that you can do with them. But before you scoot off for the night, we would really appreciate a couple of poll questions that Mia is going to throw in to the Zoom. It should just pop up on your screen. It's just two questions. One is, did you learn something new today? And the other is, do you think your kid's getting the right literacy instruction in school? Go ahead and submit those when you are able. And then Amy has thrown some additional resources into the chat. And I think Mia will get us a QR code here, which you can use to take you to all of the things that we've talked about in this presentation. When we get the video up, that will also appear here at this QR code. If you have other people that should have been here that you would like to send it to, you can feel free to pass it along to them as well. I'm so grateful that you spent your Wednesday evening with us. Thank you for coming, and we will hope to see you again soon.